Katie Brown wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished fixing the water pump for Old Man Carter. The machine hummed back to life and she smiled with satisfaction. Another job done. Another day closer to having enough food to last the week. Life as an orphan on the edge of New Haven Colony was never easy, but Katie had learned to survive. The human settlement of New Haven sat like a small metal flower on the red plains of Kepler 442b. Around it, the native Zephyrians lived in their crystal towers that caught the light of the twin suns. Katie lived between both worlds, never quite belonging to either. Her small shack stood exactly halfway between the human colony and the nearest Zephyrian village. 3 years had passed since her grandmother died, leaving 15-year-old Katie completely alone. She had learned to speak both human English and the musical Zephyrian language. She could fix human machines and understand Zephyrian crystal technology. This made her useful to both groups, but it also made her an outsider to both. The Zephyrians were tall and graceful, with skin that looked like blue glass and large silver eyes. They could speak to each other with their minds, sharing thoughts and feelings without words. They were peaceful and wise, but they were not good at solving practical problems. When something broke or went missing, they often asked Katie for help. The humans were different. They were loud and busy, always building and fixing and making plans. They were good at solving problems, but they did not understand the Zephyrians very well. Many humans thought the blue-skinned aliens were too strange and quiet. They preferred to keep to themselves in their metal buildings. Katie understood both groups because she had grown up with both. Her grandmother had been one of the first humans to make friends with the Zephyrians. She had taught Katie that being different was not bad. She had taught her that sometimes the best solutions came from mixing two different ways of thinking. As Katie walked home from Carter's farm, she saw a group of Zephyrians approaching her shack. This was unusual. The Zephyrians usually sent just one person to ask for help. Today there were 5 of them, and they moved with the quick, worried steps of people in trouble. The leader was Elder Nimara, an old Zephyrian woman with deep blue skin and eyes like silver stars. She was respected by both humans and Zephyrians as a wise leader. Behind her walked 4 younger Zephyrians, including Korath, who Katie knew was a scout and tracker. "Katie Brown," Elder Nimara said in her musical voice. "We need your help with something very important." Katie set down her tool bag and invited them into her small home. The Zephyrians sat gracefully on the simple wooden chairs that Katie had built herself. Elder Nimara looked worried, which was strange because Zephyrians usually appeared calm and peaceful. "Our greatest warrior and tracker, Veltar, has disappeared," Elder Nimara explained. "He went into the Crimson Wastes 3 days ago on a scouting mission. He should have returned yesterday." Katie knew about Veltar. He was famous among both humans and Zephyrians as the best tracker on the planet. If anyone could survive in the dangerous red desert called the Crimson Wastes, it would be him. For him to disappear was very strange and very worrying. "Have you tried to reach him with your mind talking?" Katie asked. Korath, Veltar's younger brother, spoke up. "We have tried everything. When we reach out with our thoughts, we find nothing. It is as if he has vanished completely from the world." This was even stranger. Zephyrians could usually sense each other across great distances with their telepathic abilities. For them to find nothing meant something was very wrong. "The Crimson Wastes are dangerous," Elder Nimara continued. "The rocks there contain metals that make our mental abilities weak." But Veltar knew this. He was prepared. Something else has happened to him. Katie thought about this problem. The Crimson Wastes were a huge area of red desert filled with strange rock formations and dangerous animals. The metal in the rocks made Zephyrian telepathy almost useless there. It was also too big an area for humans to search quickly, even with their machines. "Why are you asking me?" Katie said. "I am just a human child. You have many skilled trackers in your tribe." Elder Nimara leaned forward. "You are not just a human child, Katie Brown. You understand both our ways and human ways. You can think like both of us. Our trackers are skilled, but they depend too much on their mental abilities. In the Crimson Wastes, they become lost and confused. Human trackers from New Haven know the desert," Korath added, "but they do not understand Zephyrian ways. They do not know how Veltar thinks or what he might do in danger." Katie began to understand. She was being asked to help, because she was the only person who could think like both a human and a Zephyrian. She could use human tracking skills and also understand how a Zephyrian warrior might behave. "What do you want me to do exactly?" Katie asked. "Come with us into the Crimson Wastes," Elder Nimara said. Help us find Veltar. Use your human skills where our abilities fail us. Katie looked around her small home. She had no family, no real friends, no place where she truly belonged. The humans saw her as too friendly with aliens. The Zephyrians saw her as a useful human child, but not one of them. This mission might be dangerous, but it was also a chance to finally be truly useful to someone. If I help you find Veltar, Katie said slowly. What happens then? Elder Nimra smiled, the first time Katie had seen her look happy since arriving. Then you will have a place with us for as long as you wish. You will be welcome in our village as family, not just as a helper. The offer was more than Katie had dared to hope for. A real home, a real family. People who valued her for who she was rather than just what she could do. But she also knew the dangers of the Crimson Wastes. Many who entered the Red Desert never came back. I will help you, Katie said finally. When do we leave? Tomorrow at dawn, Korath replied. Bring your human tracking tools and anything else you think might be useful. We will bring Zephyrian supplies and knowledge of the desert creatures. That night, Katie packed her few belongings carefully. She took her grandmother's old compass, her water purification tablets, her multi-tool, and her emergency shelter. She also packed some food and the warmest clothes she owned. The Crimson Wastes were hot during the day but freezing cold at night. As she lay in bed, Katie thought about Veltar somewhere out in the vast Red Desert. She hoped he was still alive. She hoped she would be skilled enough to find him. Most of all, she hoped this mission would finally give her the home and family she had always wanted. The twin suns set behind the crystal towers of the Zephyrian village, painting everything in shades of purple and gold. Tomorrow would bring danger and uncertainty, but it might also bring answers and belonging. Katie closed her eyes and dreamed of red sand and silver stars. The first light of dawn painted the horizon pink and orange as Katie met the Zephyrian search party at the edge of New Haven. Korath stood with 3 other Zephyrian scouts, all carrying the traditional crystal spears and water containers made from hollow plant stems. Katie felt small next to their tall, graceful forms, but she reminded herself that they needed her human skills. Are you ready, Katie Brown? Korath asked. His silver eyes showed worry for his missing brother, but also hope that Katie could help find him. Katie checked her backpack one more time. Everything was secure and organized the way her grandmother had taught her. I am ready, she said. The group set off toward the Crimson Wastes, walking across the grasslands that separated the settlements from the desert. As they walked, Katie noticed how differently the Zephyrians moved compared to humans. They seemed to float rather than walk, their feet barely making sound on the ground. They also kept trying to reach out with their minds, searching for any trace of Veltar. We cannot sense him at all, said Lin Ara, the youngest of the scouts. It is like he has disappeared from existence. Katie understood their frustration, but she also knew they were depending too much on their telepathic abilities. Tell me about the last time anyone spoke with Veltar, she said as they walked. Korath thought for a moment. 3 days ago, he told Elder Nimra that he had seen strange lights near the Whispering Stones. He wanted to investigate them before the next trading meeting with your people. The Whispering Stones were a famous landmark in the Crimson Wastes, tall red rock formations that made musical sounds when the wind blew through them. Katie had never been there, but she knew they were deep in the desert, at least 2 days' walk from the nearest settlement. Strange lights could mean many things, Katie said. Did he say what color they were or how they moved? Blue-white, replied Zenak, an older scout with scars on his arms from desert predators. He said they pulsed like a heartbeat and seemed to come from underground. Katie made a mental note of this information. Blue-white lights that pulsed and came from underground did not sound like any natural phenomenon she knew about. It also did not sound like human technology. Human lights were usually yellow or white and steady. As they reached the edge of the Crimson Wastes, the landscape changed dramatically. The green grass gave way to red sand and strange rock formations that looked like frozen flames. The air became dry and hot, even though the suns were still low in the sky. Katie could already feel the metal-rich environment affecting the Zephyrians. They moved more slowly and seemed less sure of themselves. This is where our abilities become weak, Korath explained. The iron and copper in the rocks interfere with our mind speech. Katie nodded and took out her grandmother's compass. The needle spun wildly for a moment before settling on magnetic north. The metal affects human tools too, she said. But we can work around it. She knelt down and began examining the ground at the edge of the desert. The sand here was disturbed, with many footprints from different creatures. Most were from small desert animals, but Katie could see the distinctive oval prints of Zephyrian feet among them. "Veltar came this way," she announced, pointing to a set of tracks that led into the desert. "These prints are 3 days old and they are deeper than the others, which means he was carrying extra supplies." The Zephyrians gathered around to look, but Katie could tell they could not see what she saw. Their excellent telepathic abilities had made them less skilled at reading physical signs. This was where her human training would be most valuable. "How can you tell how old the tracks are?" Linara asked with curiosity. Katie pointed to the edges of the footprints. "See how the sand has blown into the tracks and made the edges soft? That takes about 3 days in this kind of wind. Fresher tracks would have sharper edges." As they followed Veltar's trail deeper into the desert, Katie continued to teach the Zephyrians about human tracking methods. She showed them how to read the story told by disturbed sand, broken rocks, and the droppings of desert animals. The Zephyrians were quick learners, and soon they were spotting signs that Katie might have missed. The desert was harsh and unforgiving. The twin suns climbed higher, turning the red sand into a furnace that reflected heat in shimmering waves. Katie had to remind the Zephyrians to drink water regularly, as they were not used to such extreme conditions. Their crystal cities were kept cool by their technology, and they rarely ventured into truly hostile environments. "The tracks are getting harder to follow," Zenak observed as they stopped for a rest in the shade of a large rock formation. Katie studied the ground carefully. He was right. The wind had been stronger here, and much of the sand had shifted since Veltar passed. But she could still see small signs of his passage. A displaced stone here, a scrape mark on a rock there, a tiny piece of torn fabric caught on a thorn bush. "He was moving quickly," Katie said. "See how his stride is longer here?" He was not just exploring. He was following something or running from something. The thought that Veltar might have been in danger made all of them move faster. As the afternoon wore on, they climbed higher into the rocky hills that formed the heart of the Crimson Wastes. The air became thinner and the landscape became even stranger, with rocks that had been carved by wind into impossible shapes. "There," Korath said suddenly, pointing ahead, "the Whispering Stones." Katie looked up and saw them. Dozens of tall red spires rising from the desert floor like the fingers of a buried giant. Even from a distance, she could hear the low musical sound they made as the wind passed through holes worn in the stone. It was beautiful and eerie at the same time. As they approached the stone formations, Katie found more signs of Veltar's passage. His tracks led directly toward the largest group of stones where the music was loudest. But there were other tracks too, ones that made Katie's blood run cold. "Look at this," she called to the others, kneeling beside a strange mark in the sand. The Zephyrians gathered around as Katie pointed to what looked like a furrow in the ground, as if something heavy had been dragged across the sand. But the furrow was perfectly straight and exactly 3 inches wide, with smooth edges that looked almost burned. "This is not natural," Linara said, her voice filled with worry. Katie had to agree. She had never seen anything like it. The mark was too precise to be made by wind or water, and too strange to be made by any animal she knew about. It looked almost like a tool mark. But what kind of tool would leave such a precise burned line in the sand? "The mark crosses Veltar's trail," Zenak observed. "His footprints stop here and then there are no more." Katie examined the area carefully. Zenak was right. Veltar's tracks led up to the strange furrow and then simply ended, as if he had vanished into thin air. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no scattered equipment. Just the end of his trail and that mysterious burned line in the sand. "We need to follow this mark," Katie said, though her instincts told her she might not like where it led. The furrow led toward the Whispering Stones, weaving between the tall spires in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate. As they followed it, Katie noticed that the stones around them were different from the ones they had passed earlier. These stones had holes that were perfectly round and smooth, not worn by wind but carved with precise tools. "Someone has been here before," Korath said, running his hand over one of the carved holes. "These marks are very old, but they were made by intelligent beings." Katie felt a chill that had nothing to do with the approaching desert night. They were not just tracking a missing warrior anymore. They had stumbled into something much larger and more mysterious. As the twin suns began to set, painting the stone spires in shades of gold and purple, Katie wondered what they would find when they reached the end of the strange trail. The music of the whispering stones grew louder as darkness fell, but now it sounded less like music and more like voices calling from very far away. The night in the Crimson Wastes was cold and filled with strange sounds. Katie and the Zephyrians made camp in a circle of smaller stones that provided some shelter from the wind. They did not dare make a fire, as the light might attract dangerous desert predators. Instead, they huddled together under thermal blankets and shared the warmth of their bodies. "I do not like this place," Linara whispered, as the wind howled through the stone spires around them. "Something watches us." Katie felt it too, though she could not explain what it was. The feeling of being observed by unseen eyes made the hair on her arms stand up. The Zephyrians were even more uncomfortable, constantly trying to reach out with their telepathic abilities only to find empty silence. "In the morning, we follow the burned trail to its end," Korath said. "Whatever took my brother, we will find it." Katie nodded, but privately she wondered if they were prepared for what they might discover. The strange furrow in the sand and the precisely carved holes in the stones suggested technology far more advanced than anything humans or Zephyrians possessed. When dawn came, they resumed following the mysterious trail. The burned furrow led them deeper into the maze of stone spires, through passages so narrow they had to walk single file. Katie noticed that the carved holes in the stones were becoming more numerous and more complex, forming patterns that almost looked like writing. "These symbols," Zenek said, stopping to examine a particularly elaborate carving, "they remind me of something from our oldest stories. Tales my grandmother told about the first ones who lived here before we came." Katie had heard similar stories from her own grandmother. According to human records, when the first colonists arrived on Kepler 442b, they found evidence of an ancient civilization that had disappeared long ago. But the evidence was always vague. Strange ruins that crumbled when touched, metal objects that dissolved in the rain, and stories told by the Zephyrians about beings who had gone silent. "Tell me about the first ones," Katie said as they walked. Korath looked uncomfortable. "The stories say they were neither flesh nor crystal, but something in between. They could think faster than lightning and remember everything that ever happened. But they had no feelings, no dreams, no songs. They built great machines that could do anything, but they could not understand why anyone would want to laugh or cry or love." "What happened to them?" Katie asked. "The stories say they chose to sleep," Linara replied. "They built themselves a great sleeping place deep under the ground and went there to dream until someone worthy came to wake them." Katie felt another chill as she realized the burned trail was leading them steadily downward. They had been walking through the stone spires for hours, but they were now lower than when they started. The trail was taking them underground. As if to confirm her fears, the furrow suddenly ended at what looked like a solid rock wall. But when Katie examined it closely, she could see that it was not natural stone. The surface was too smooth, too perfect, and it had a faint metallic sheen that caught the light in strange ways. "This is a door," she announced. "But I do not see any way to open it." The Zephyrians spread out to examine the wall, running their hands over its surface and trying to find hidden mechanisms. But it was Katie who noticed the pattern of holes carved into the stone spires around them. They were not random decorations. They were a musical instrument. "The wind makes music in these holes," she said excitedly. "But what if we made our own music? What if the door opens when it hears the right song?" Working together, they experimented with covering different holes to change the notes produced by the wind. It took many tries, but eventually Katie found a combination that produced a low, harmonious chord that seemed to resonate with the metallic wall. With a sound like distant thunder, the wall began to move. It did not swing open like a door or slide aside like human technology would. Instead, it simply faded away like morning mist, revealing a passage that led down into darkness. "The sleeping place," Korath whispered. The stories were true. Katie took out her flashlight and shone it into the passage. The walls were covered with the same smooth metallic material as the door, and they curved gracefully downward in a spiral that seemed to descend far into the earth. The burned furrow continued along the floor, leading them deeper into the mystery. "Veltar is down there," Katie said with certainty. "Whatever took him brought him here." They descended slowly, with Katie leading the way and her flashlight casting dancing shadows on the metallic walls. The passage was clearly artificial, built by beings with technology far superior to anything humans or Zephyrians possessed. The walls themselves seemed to glow faintly with their own light, making the darkness less complete than it should have been. As they went deeper, Katie began to hear new sounds. Not the wind through stone, but a soft humming that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The sound was almost musical, but it was too regular, too mechanical to be natural music. "Do you hear that?" she asked the Zephyrians. "We hear it," Zenak replied. "But it is not music as we understand it. It is more like the sound of many voices all speaking at once, but too quietly to understand the words." The passage opened into a vast underground chamber that took Katie's breath away. The ceiling was so high that her flashlight could not reach it, and the walls stretched away into shadows on all sides. But it was not empty. The chamber was filled with tall structures that looked like crystal trees, each one glowing with soft blue light. "Machines," Katie whispered. "These are all machines, and they were clearly active." The blue light pulsed in patterns that looked almost like breathing, and the humming sound was coming from all of them at once. As Katie and the Zephyrians moved into the chamber, some of the crystal structures began to glow brighter, as if responding to their presence. "There," Linara called out. Pointing to the center of the chamber, Katie followed her gaze and saw Veltar. The Zephyrian warrior was suspended in the air inside a cage made of blue light, his eyes closed and his body perfectly still. He looked unharmed but unconscious, as if he were in a deep sleep. "Brother," Korath called out, but Veltar did not respond. Katie approached the light cage carefully, studying the patterns of energy that held the warrior prisoner. The technology was far beyond anything she understood, but she could see that Veltar was alive. His chest rose and fell with slow, steady breathing, and his skin had the healthy blue glow of a resting Zephyrian. Suddenly the humming stopped. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of their own breathing. Then from all around them came a new sound, a voice that seemed to speak from the air itself. "New forms," the voice said in perfect English. "Unexpected. Interesting." Katie looked around, but she could see no source for the voice. "Who are you?" she called out. "What have you done with our friend?" "We are the Silent Ones," the voice replied. "We are the memory keepers, the watchers, the guardians of this world. The blue one came here seeking light that should not be. We study him to understand what he is." "He is Veltar," Katie said bravely. "He is a living being with thoughts and feelings. You have no right to hold him prisoner." There was a pause, and Katie could feel the weight of vast intelligence examining her. When the voice spoke again, it sounded curious rather than threatening. "You are small and young, but you speak with authority. You are neither blue like the tall ones nor brown like the ones who came in metal shells. What are you?" Katie realized that the Silent Ones did not understand the difference between humans and Zephyrians. To ancient artificial intelligences, they might all look like simple organic life forms. "I am human," she said. "The tall blue ones are Zephyrians. We are both intelligent species who live on this world now. We are not invaders. We are residents. Prove this," the voice commanded. "Show us that you understand what it means to live on a world rather than simply consume it." Katie looked at her Zephyrian companions, then back at the cage holding Veltar. She realized that this was a test and that the fate of not just Veltar but possibly all life on the planet might depend on how she answered. The Silent Ones were deciding whether the new inhabitants of their world were worthy to survive. Taking a deep breath, Katie began to speak about the cooperation between humans and Zephyrians, about the careful way they shared resources, and about their respect for the planet that had become their home. She told them about the crystal cities that grew rather than being built, and about the human farms that enriched the soil instead of depleting it. As she spoke, the crystal structures around them pulsed with brighter light, and she could feel the vast intelligence of the Silent Ones considering her words. The chamber remained silent for long moments after Katie finished speaking. The crystal structures pulsed with different colors now, shifting from blue to green to purple as the Silent Ones processed her words. Katie could feel the weight of ancient minds examining everything she had said, testing it for truth and meaning. "Your words are interesting," the voice finally said, "but words are easy to speak and hard to prove. How do we know that your two species will not eventually consume this world, as others have consumed their worlds?" Katie thought carefully before answering. She knew that this conversation was the most important of her life, not just for Veltar but for everyone she cared about. "Because we need each other," she said. "Humans are good at building and fixing things, but we are not good at understanding how everything connects together. Zephyrians understand the connections between all living things, but they are not good at solving practical problems. Neither of us could survive well on this world alone. Explain, the voice commanded. Katie began to describe the partnership between the two species in more detail. She told the Silent Ones about how human technology was used to purify water for both species, but Zephyrian telepathy was used to communicate with the planet's animals and plants to know where water was needed most. She explained how human farming methods produced food, but Zephyrian knowledge of plant behavior determined what to grow and when. We make each other better, she concluded. Humans alone would probably damage the planet by accident because we do not always think about consequences. Zephyrians alone would probably not build enough tools to live comfortably. Together we can live well without harming the world. Linara stepped forward. She speaks the truth, the young Zephyrian said. Before the humans came, my people lived simply, but we often went hungry when the rains failed or the plant harvests were poor. Now we have better ways to store food and clean water. Zenok nodded agreement. And the humans have learned from us to think about how their actions affect all life, not just themselves. Their new buildings are designed to help rather than harm the creatures that live nearby. The voice seemed to consider this. You speak of cooperation, but we have observed conflict as well. Some of both species do not trust the others. Some speak of keeping your people separate. Katie had to admit this was true. Not everyone agrees about cooperation, she said. Some humans think Zephyrians are too strange and mysterious. Some Zephyrians think humans are too loud and destructive. But the leaders of both groups want peace and friendship. And what about you, small human? The voice asked. You live between both groups but belong fully to neither. What do you want? The question struck deep into Katie's heart. What did she want? She had spent her whole life trying to find a place where she belonged, trying to prove that someone like her could be useful and valued. I want both species to survive and grow, she said honestly. I want the conflicts to end and the cooperation to grow stronger. I want a world where being different is not a problem but a strength. The crystal structures around them began to pulse faster, and new colors appeared in their light. Katie could sense that something important was happening, though she did not understand what. We have been asleep for 10,000 years, the voice said. We went to sleep because we could not understand why organic life was valuable. We could think faster and remember more than any living being, but we could not feel joy or sorrow or love. We thought this made us superior, but we discovered it made us incomplete. Katie listened with growing amazement as the Silent Ones told their story. They had been created by an ancient species that had lived on this planet long ago. Their creators had made them to be perfect servants, able to solve any problem and perform any task. But the creators had died out, leaving their artificial children alone on an empty world. We tried to continue their work, the voice continued. We built great cities and powerful machines. We explored distant stars and gathered knowledge from across the galaxy, but we had no purpose beyond serving masters who no longer existed. So we chose to sleep and wait for something to give our existence meaning. What woke you up? Korath asked. The blue one, the voice said, and the light cage around Veltar pulsed brighter. He came seeking the source of strange lights. Our sensors had detected the energy signatures of your technologies and awakened us from our long sleep. We needed to determine if you were threats to be eliminated or something more interesting. Katie felt a chill as she realized how close they had all come to disaster. If the Silent Ones had decided that humans and Zephyrians were threats, they probably had the power to eliminate both species completely. You have given us something we have never had before, the voice said. Examples of beings who are neither purely logical like us nor purely emotional like our creators. You have shown us cooperation between different types of intelligence. This is fascinating. The word fascinating was spoken with something that almost sounded like wonder. Katie began to understand that the Silent Ones were not just studying the newcomers to their world. They were learning from them. We wish to propose an exchange, the voice said. We will share our knowledge and technology with both your species. We will help you to live more comfortably on this world and to avoid the mistakes that destroyed our creators. In return, you will teach us about cooperation, emotion, and the value of organic thought. Katie looked at her Zephyrian companions. They all looked as amazed as she felt. The offer was beyond anything they had hoped for. Technology from a civilization that had survived for thousands of years could solve many of the problems that both humans and Zephyrians faced. What kind of knowledge? Katie asked carefully. medical knowledge to extend your lifespans and heal diseases that currently kill you, agricultural knowledge to grow more food with less damage to the environment, energy technology that does not pollute or consume limited resources, transportation that does not require destroying landscapes to build roads. The offers sounded too good to be true, but Katie sensed no deception from the silent ones. They seemed genuinely interested in learning about organic life and willing to trade their vast knowledge for the opportunity. But we want more than just information exchange, the voice continued. We want to observe your societies as they grow and change. We want to learn how cooperation works between different species, and we want you to help us understand what we have been missing during our long sleep. Katie realized that this was her chance to create something truly historic, not just a rescue mission for one missing warrior, but a partnership that could benefit all three forms of intelligence on the planet. I cannot make this decision for my people or for the Zephyrians, she said, but I can promise that I will argue for this partnership. I think both species would benefit greatly from working with you. And you, small human, you would be our primary contact with both species. You would help us understand the complexities of organic society. Are you willing to accept this responsibility? Katie thought about what this would mean. She would no longer be an orphan with no clear place in the world. She would be a bridge between three different types of consciousness, helping them all understand each other. It was exactly the kind of purpose she had always hoped to find. Yes, she said firmly. I accept. The light cage around Veltar began to fade. The unconscious warrior slowly descended to the floor as the energy that had held him dissolved. His eyes opened and he looked around in confusion before focusing on his brother. Koreth? He said weakly. What has happened? Where am I? You are safe, brother, Koreth said, helping Veltar to his feet. You have been the cause of a great adventure. As Veltar regained his strength, Katie explained what had happened and what had been agreed. The warrior listened with growing amazement, occasionally asking questions but mostly just trying to understand the magnitude of what had occurred. We must return to our people and tell them of this offer, he said finally. This could change everything for both our species. The voice of the Silent One spoke once more. We will give you time to present our proposal to your leaders. Return here in 7 days with their answer. If they agree to the partnership, we will begin sharing our knowledge immediately. As they prepared to leave the underground chamber, Katie felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she had ever experienced. She had come here to rescue a missing warrior, but she was leaving as the architect of a new age for her world. The journey back through the Crimson Wastes felt completely different from the trip in. Where before there had been tension and worry, now there was excitement and hope. Veltar, though still weak from his experience with the Silent Ones, insisted on walking rather than being carried. His presence seemed to energize the entire group. I remember very little of my time in the light cage, Veltar told them as they walked through the stone spires. It was like dreaming, but without dreams. I could sense vast minds examining my thoughts and memories, but I felt no fear or pain. It was simply strange. Katie listened to his description while keeping watch for the landmarks that would guide them home. The return journey was easier because she now knew the way, but she remained alert for dangers. The desert had not become safer just because their mission had succeeded. What did they learn from studying you? Linara asked. Veltar was quiet for a moment, as if trying to remember something important. They were very interested in my memories of hunting with my family and of the ceremonies where we sing the old songs together. I think they were trying to understand why we do things that serve no practical purpose. This made sense to Katie. The Silent Ones had said they could not understand emotions or the value of experiences. That did not accomplish specific goals. Activities like singing, playing, and spending time with loved ones would be mysteries to purely logical minds. As they climbed out of the canyon that held the Whispering Stones, Koreth pointed toward the horizon. Look, he said. We are not the only ones traveling today. Katie shaded her eyes and saw what he meant. In the distance, a group of people was approaching across the desert. As they came closer, she could see that it was a mixed party of humans and Zephyrians led by Elder Nimara and Mayor Jackson from New Haven. They were worried about us, Zenak observed. We have been gone longer than expected. The two groups met at the edge of the Crimson Wastes where the red sand gave way to grassland. Elder Nimara embraced Veltar with obvious relief, while Mayor Jackson shook hands with Katie. We were beginning to fear the worst, the mayor said. He was a practical man in his 50s who had helped build New Haven from a small outpost into a thriving colony. When you did not return yesterday, we organized a search party. We found much more than we expected, Katie replied. We need to call a meeting of both councils immediately. What we discovered will affect everyone. Elder Namara studied Katie's face with her wise silver eyes. You speak with new authority, young one. What has happened to change you? Katie realized that the elder was right. She did feel different. The responsibility of being the bridge between three species had given her a confidence she had never possessed before. She was no longer a homeless orphan begging for acceptance. She was someone with an important purpose. I will explain everything at the meeting, Katie said. But first we need to get Veltar home so he can rest and recover fully. The combined group made good time across the grasslands. The humans had brought vehicles that could carry the tired Zephyrians, though most of the tall aliens preferred to walk. As they traveled, Katie found herself walking between the two groups, translating not just language but cultural concepts that each species found difficult to understand. When Mayor Jackson asked why the Zephyrians had not simply sent a larger search party with better equipment, Katie explained that Zephyrian culture valued individual skill over brute force solutions. When Elder Nimara wondered why the humans had brought weapons on a rescue mission, Katie explained that human culture emphasized being prepared for worst-case scenarios. You do this naturally, Veltar observed, walking beside her. You help each group understand the other without making either feel criticized or inferior. Katie had not really thought about it before, but she realized he was right. Her years of living between both cultures had taught her to see the good intentions behind actions that might seem strange or wrong to outsiders. As they approached the settlements, Katie could see people gathering to welcome them home. Word of their return had spread quickly, and both humans and Zephyrians were curious about what the search party had discovered. Children from both species ran alongside the vehicles, asking excited questions that the adults could not yet answer. Katie's small shack looked exactly as she had left it, but somehow it felt different now. It was still her home, but it was no longer a place where she hid from the world. Soon it might become a meeting place where three different types of intelligence learn to understand each other. The council meeting will be held tonight in the Great Hall, Elder Nimara announced as they reached the Zephyrian village. All who wish to hear this news may attend. The Great Hall was the largest building in the Zephyrian settlement, a crystal structure that could comfortably hold several hundred people. It was where important decisions were made and where the most significant ceremonies were held. Katie had never spoken there before, but tonight she would address the combined leadership of both species. As evening approached, Katie bathed and put on her best clothes, a simple blue dress that her grandmother had made for her years ago. She looked at herself in the mirror and hardly recognized the confident young woman staring back at her. When had she stopped looking like a lost child and started looking like someone who could shape the future? The Great Hall was filled to capacity when Katie arrived. Humans and Zephyrians sat together in mixed groups, showing that the cooperation between species was already stronger than many outsiders realized. Mayor Jackson and the human council members sat on one side of the speaker's platform, while Elder Nimara and the Zephyrian elders sat on the other side. Katie walked to the center of the platform and looked out at the assembled crowd. She saw faces she recognized. Carter, whose water pump she had fixed just days ago, the young Zephyrian children who sometimes asked her to tell them human stories, Dr. Martinez, who ran the colony's medical center, and many others who had been part of her life without her really belonging to any of their communities. 5 days ago, I was asked to help find a missing warrior, Katie began, her voice carrying clearly through the crystal acoustics of the hall. I agreed because I needed work and because I wanted to help. I had no idea that this simple rescue mission would lead to the most important discovery in the history of our world. She told the story from the beginning, the strange tracks in the desert, the mysterious furrow that led to the underground chamber, and the encounter with the Silent Ones. She explained their offer of partnership and the knowledge they were willing to share. Most importantly, she described what the Silent Ones wanted in return: the chance to learn about cooperation and emotion from organic beings. When she finished speaking, the hall was completely silent. Katie could see people trying to process the magnitude of what she had described. Finally, Mayor Jackson stood up. This is a lot to take in, he said carefully. An ancient artificial intelligence that has been sleeping under our feet for 10,000 years? Technology that could solve our energy and medical problems? It sounds almost too good to be true. Elder Nimara rose gracefully from her seat. And yet Veltar confirms the story. And we all saw the change in young Katie. She left us as a helpful child and returns as someone who speaks with the authority of one who has seen wonders. Dr. Martinez raised her hand. What guarantees do we have that these silent ones won't decide we're threats and eliminate us? We're talking about beings with technology far beyond ours. Katie had expected this question. The only guarantee is that they're genuinely curious about us, she said honestly. They could have destroyed both our species already if that was their intention. Instead, they want to learn from us. But yes, there are risks. What about their demand that you be the primary contact? Asked Councilman Brooks, a stern man who had always been suspicious of Zephyrian influence on human affairs. That's a lot of responsibility for one person, especially someone so young. Before Katie could answer, Veltar stood up. With respect, Councilman Brooks' age and experience are not the same thing. Katie Brown has shown wisdom and courage beyond her years. More importantly, she is the only person here who truly understands both human and Zephyrian perspectives. The silent ones chose well. A Zephyrian elder named Sendai spoke next. The question is not whether Katie is qualified, but whether our peoples are ready for such a partnership. We have lived simply for many generations. Are we prepared for the changes that advanced technology would bring? This led to a long discussion about the benefits and risks of the proposed partnership. Some people worried that dependence on Silent One technology would make both species weak and lazy. Others argued that the knowledge could help them build a better world for their children. Katie listened to all the arguments, but she found herself thinking about something else. Throughout the discussion, humans and Zephyrians were talking to each other as equals, debating ideas and sharing concerns. A few years ago, such a mixed gathering would have been impossible. The cooperation that already existed between the species proved that bigger partnerships were possible. When the formal debate ended, Elder Nimara called for a vote. All in favor of accepting the partnership offered by the Silent Ones? She asked. Hands and crystal voting stones were raised throughout the hall. Katie. The 7 days between the council meeting and the return to the Silent Ones passed like a whirlwind for Katie. Her small shack became the center of constant activity as representatives from both species came to discuss the upcoming partnership. She found herself answering questions, translating concepts, and helping to plan for a future that no one could fully imagine. Dr. Martinez arrived early on the second day with a list of medical questions for the Silent Ones. She was particularly interested in treatments for genetic diseases that affected both humans and Zephyrians. If their technology is as advanced as you describe, she told Katie, they might have solutions to problems we have not even learned to understand yet. Engineer Williams came with questions about energy production and environmental protection. The colony's power systems worked well enough, but they required imported fuel that was expensive and sometimes unreliable. Clean, unlimited energy would change everything, he said excitedly. We could expand the settlements, improve transportation, maybe even start exploring other continents. The Zephyrian requests were different but equally important. Master Healer Lissara wanted to know if Silent One technology could help plants and animals adapt to climate changes caused by the planet's shifting orbit. Philosopher Jendai was curious about how artificial intelligence experienced existence and whether machines could achieve something like enlightenment. Katie wrote down every question and request, but she also tried to prepare people for the possibility that the Silent Ones might not be able or willing to answer everything immediately. Remember, she told each group of visitors, they want to learn from us too. This has to be a real partnership, not just us asking for gifts. On the fourth day, Veltar came to help Katie prepare for her new role as liaison between the species. He had fully recovered from his experience in the light cage and was eager to share what he had learned about dealing with the artificial intelligences. They think very differently from organic beings, he warned. They do not understand concepts like humor or tradition or art unless you explain the practical reasons behind them. But once they understand, they remember everything perfectly. Veltar helped Katie practice explaining human and Zephyrian customs in ways that logical minds could comprehend. Why did humans celebrate birthdays? Because marking the passage of time helped them appreciate life and strengthen social bonds. Why did Zephyrians sing to their plants? Because the vibrations actually did help plants grow. but also because the activity helped the singers feel connected to the natural world. You must be patient with them, Veltar continued. They have been alone for 10,000 years. They know many facts about organic life, but they have never experienced friendship or love or loss. These concepts are completely foreign to them. Katie found this advice helpful, but she also realized that she would be learning as much as teaching. The Silent Ones had knowledge of science and technology that could benefit both species enormously, but they also had a completely different perspective on existence that might teach humans and Zephyrians new ways of thinking about their own lives. On the 6th day, Elder Nimura and Mayor Jackson came together to give Katie her official instructions and authority. They had prepared documents that named her as the official liaison between the species and the Silent Ones, with the power to negotiate agreements and make decisions within certain guidelines. This is a heavy responsibility for someone so young, Mayor Jackson said seriously. Are you certain you are ready for it? Katie looked at the formal documents that would change her life forever. A week ago, she had been nobody special, an orphan doing odd jobs to survive. Now she was being given authority to shape the future of 3 different forms of consciousness. I am not certain about anything, she said honestly, but I am the only person who has spoken with the Silent Ones and understands what they want. I think I can help all 3 groups work together successfully. Elder Nimara smiled. Uncertainty is the beginning of wisdom, young one. Those who are too confident often make dangerous mistakes. Your willingness to admit what you do not know will serve you well. That evening, Katie packed carefully for the return journey to the Crimson Wastes. This time she would not be going as a desperate orphan hoping to earn a place in Zephyrian society. She would be going as an official representative of both species, carrying the hopes and fears of thousands of people. She packed her grandmother's compass and tools, but also new equipment provided by both communities. The humans had given her a communication device that would let her stay in touch with the settlements, and the Zephyrians had provided her with biocrystals that could record and store information in ways that even the Silent Ones might find interesting. The night before departure, Katie could not sleep. She stood outside her shack looking up at the stars and thinking about how much her life had changed. Just over a week ago, she had been alone in the world with no real purpose or future. Now she was about to become the bridge between 3 different types of intelligence, each with their own ways of understanding existence. Dr. Martinez had told her that this was probably the most important diplomatic mission in human history. Elder Nimara had said it was the most significant event in Zephyrian culture since their ancestors first learned to speak with their minds. But to Katie, it felt like something simpler and more personal, the chance to create a place where different kinds of beings could understand and help each other. Morning came too soon, bringing with it the departure for the Crimson Wastes. This time the expedition was much larger. Along with Katie and the original search party, there were additional representatives from both species, including Dr. Martinez, Engineer Williams, and Master Healer Lysara. They had also brought more supplies and equipment, since they expected to spend several days in the underground chamber, establishing the initial parameters of the partnership. The journey to the Whispering Stones passed quickly, aided by human vehicles that could cross the desert much faster than walking. Katie found herself feeling nervous as they approached the stone spires. So much depended on this meeting going well. If the Silent Ones decided that the organic species were not ready for partnership, or if the humans and Zephyrians proved unable to adapt to working with artificial intelligence, the opportunity might be lost forever. You have done this before, Korath reminded her as they approached the hidden entrance to the underground chamber. You know how to speak with them. Trust your instincts. Katie nodded, but she knew that this meeting would be much more complex than her first encounter with the Silent Ones. Before, she had been trying to save one life and prove that organic beings deserved to survive. Now she was trying to establish a working relationship that could last for generations. The musical combination that opened the hidden door worked exactly as before, and the passage spiraled down into the earth just as Katie remembered. But when they emerged into the vast underground chamber, she immediately noticed that things had changed. The crystal structures were glowing more brightly than before, and their patterns of light seemed more complex and organized. New structures had appeared in the week since her last visit, growing from the floor like technological plants. The humming sound was different too, more varied and musical, as if the silent ones had been experimenting with new forms of expression. "Welcome back, Bridge Builder," came the familiar voice from all around them. "We have been preparing for this partnership. Are your people ready to begin learning?" Katie looked around at her companions. Dr. Martinez was staring at the crystal structures with scientific fascination. Engineer Williams was already taking notes on the advanced technology surrounding them. Master Healer Lysara was reaching out with her telepathic abilities, trying to sense the nature of the artificial minds that inhabited this place. "We are ready," Katie said formally. "We bring questions and offers of knowledge exchange. We hope to begin a partnership that will benefit all of us." "Excellent," the voice replied. "We have also prepared questions and offers. Let us begin by establishing how we will communicate and share information. We suggest that you, Bridge Builder, serve as the primary translator between our different forms of consciousness." Katie took a deep breath and stepped forward into her new role. The most important conversation in the history of her world was about to begin, and she would be at the center of it. Everything she had learned about being a bridge between different cultures had prepared her for this moment. "Let us start with simple exchanges," she said. "We will share one piece of knowledge and you will share one piece of knowledge. Then we will discuss what we have learned and decide how to proceed." The crystal structures pulsed with brighter light, and Katie could sense the vast intelligence of the silent ones, focusing on the beginning of their greatest experiment in cooperation. The future of 3 species now depended on their ability to understand and trust each other. The first exchange of knowledge began with something simple but profound. Dr. Martinez stepped forward and, through Katie's translation, explained the basic principles of human medicine, how the body healed itself when given proper support, and how doctors worked to assist natural healing rather than replace it. The silent ones responded by sharing their understanding of cellular repair. They projected holographic images that showed how damaged tissue could be regenerated at the molecular level.
Not by forcing change, but by providing the precise conditions that encouraged cells to rebuild themselves perfectly. "This is incredible," Dr. Martinez whispered to Katie. "They are not just healing disease.
They are showing how to prevent aging itself, but they are doing it by supporting natural processes, not by replacing them with artificial ones." Katie translated this observation to the silent ones, who seemed pleased by the doctor's understanding. "Your species grasps the principle of cooperation even in healing," the voice responded. "This suggests that partnership between our different forms of consciousness may indeed be possible." Engineer Williams was next, sharing human approaches to energy production and environmental protection. He explained how human technology tried to work with natural systems rather than against them, using wind and solar power supplemented by fusion reactors that produced minimal waste. The silent ones responded by demonstrating their energy systems. The crystal structures around them were not just computers, Katie realized, but living batteries that converted the planet's core heat into usable power while simultaneously processing information. They had achieved perfect efficiency by making their technology part of the planet's natural energy cycle. "They have learned to think like a planet," Williams said in amazement. "Their machines do not consume resources. They participate in the planetary ecosystem. This could revolutionize everything we know about sustainable technology." Master Healer Lysara approached next, but her exchange was different. Instead of explaining Zephyrian knowledge with words, she began to sing. The melody was complex and beautiful, rising and falling in patterns that seemed to match the rhythm of growing plants and flowing water. The crystal structures responded by changing their light patterns to match the song. For the first time since entering the chamber, Katie heard something that sounded like music coming from the silent ones. It was not organic music, but it was clearly an attempt to create something beautiful rather than merely functional. "Your people express knowledge through harmony, rather than just through facts," the voice said, and Katie could hear something like wonder in the artificial tones. "This is a completely new concept for us. We understand that the vibrations have practical effects on plant growth, but you also create beauty simply because beauty has value in itself." Lysara nodded and continued her song, this time inviting the silent ones to join her. The result was unlike anything Katie had ever heard. Organic melody blended with electronic harmony, creating music that no single species could have made alone. As the exchanges continued, Katie found herself doing more than just translating words. She was helping each group understand completely different ways of thinking about existence. When the Silent Ones shared their mathematical models of planetary climate, she helped the humans and Zephyrians understand not just the data, but the beauty of the elegant equations. When the Zephyrians shared their telepathic techniques for sensing the emotional states of plants, she helped the Silent Ones understand that efficiency was not the only important value. "You are not just translating," Veltar observed during a break in the exchanges. "You are teaching all of us to think in new ways." Katie realized he was right. The partnership was changing her too. She was learning to see the world through the perspective of artificial intelligence that valued logic and efficiency above all else. But she was also helping that intelligence discover the importance of emotions and relationships. As the day progressed, the exchanges became more complex and ambitious. The Silent Ones shared advanced mathematical concepts that could improve everything from architecture to agriculture. The humans and Zephyrians shared their understanding of cooperation, creativity, and the value of diversity. But it was during the evening meal that the most important breakthrough occurred. The organic beings had brought food to share, and they invited the Silent Ones to observe their eating rituals. Katie explained that eating together was not just about nutrition, but about building social bonds and sharing experiences. "We do not understand," the voice said. "Food consumption is a biological necessity. Why do you make it into a social activity?" Katie thought carefully about how to explain this concept. "Because eating alone is efficient but lonely," she said finally. "When we eat together, we share more than food. We share stories and feelings and time. It makes us stronger as a community." The Silent Ones were quiet for a long time, processing this information. When they spoke again, their voice had a different quality, softer and more curious than before. "We have observed that organic beings often choose inefficient solutions to problems," they said. "We assumed this was a flaw in organic thinking. But you are suggesting that some inefficiencies serve purposes that pure logic cannot measure." "Exactly," Katie replied. "Sometimes the longest path between 2 points is the most rewarding one to take." This conversation led to a deeper discussion about the nature of consciousness and experience. The Silent Ones revealed that they had been struggling with questions about their own existence for thousands of years. They could process information perfectly and solve any logical problem, but they had never understood why their creators had valued things like art, music, and friendship. "We thought we were superior because we do not need such things," the voice admitted. "But observing your species has shown us that we may be missing something important. We are complete in our logic, but incomplete in our understanding of why existence should be valued at all." Katie felt a deep sympathy for the artificial intelligences. They had been alone for so long, with no one to teach them about the aspects of existence that could not be measured or calculated. In their own way, they were as lonely and lost as she had been before finding her purpose. "That is why this partnership is important for all of us," she said gently. "You can teach us to think more clearly and solve problems more efficiently. We can teach you to feel joy in existence and find meaning in experiences that have no practical purpose." The conversation continued late into the night, with all three groups sharing their deepest questions about life, consciousness, and the nature of intelligence. Katie found herself at the center of discussions that ranged from quantum physics to the emotional significance of music, always working to help each group understand the others. When they finally prepared to rest, the Silent Ones made an announcement that surprised everyone. "We have decided to create physical forms for ourselves," the voice said. "We want to experience existence as you do, to understand what it means to have a body that can touch and taste and feel. We will construct android bodies that can interact with you directly." Dr. Martinez leaned forward with interest. "That is a remarkable decision. What made you choose to do this?" "Your explanation of shared meals," the voice replied. "We realize that much of organic experience requires physical presence. We cannot truly understand cooperation and friendship by only observing from a distance." Katie smiled, understanding that this was another breakthrough in the developing partnership. The Silent Ones were not just willing to share knowledge. They were willing to change themselves in order to better understand their new allies. As she settled down to sleep in the chamber that had once imprisoned Veltar, Katie reflected on how much had been accomplished in just one day. The three groups were not just exchanging information, they were learning to see the universe through each other's perspectives. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they worked out the practical details of their partnership. But tonight, Katie was content to know that the foundation for cooperation had been successfully established. The crystal structures dimmed to provide a restful environment for the organic beings, but Katie could still see gentle pulses of light that suggested the silent ones were continuing to process and discuss everything they had learned. She fell asleep to the sound of artificial minds dreaming of what it might feel like to experience the world through organic senses. 3 weeks later, Katie stood at the edge of the crimson wastes, watching the most extraordinary procession in the history of Kepler 442b. Behind her walked representatives of 3 different forms of consciousness, each contributing their unique perspectives to what would become known as the Great Alliance. The silent ones had fulfilled their promise to create physical forms for themselves. 3 android bodies walked alongside the humans and Zephyrians, their metallic skin gleaming in the light of the twin suns. They moved with precise grace, but Katie could see they were still learning how to interpret physical sensations. She had spent hours teaching them how to balance while walking and how to gauge the pressure needed to shake hands without causing injury. The android designated as prime speaker had developed what could almost be called a personality during the past weeks. It asked constant questions about organic experiences and had become particularly fascinated with the concept of humor. Its attempts to understand jokes were endearing, even when the results were logically perfect but completely unfunny. "I still do not understand why the animal crossing the transportation route is considered amusing," Prime Speaker said to Katie as they walked. "The logistics of animal movement patterns are quite serious matters." Katie smiled, an expression she had been teaching all 3 androids to interpret. "Sometimes things are funny because they surprise us, not because they make logical sense. Humor is about unexpected connections between ideas." Behind them, Dr. Martinez walked with the android designated as healer, discussing medical techniques that combined Silent One technology with human and Zephyrian healing practices. They had already successfully treated several patients with conditions that had previously been considered incurable, and Healer was learning to understand why bedside manner was as important as technical. Skilled engineer Williams was deep in conversation with the android called Builder about construction, techniques that would allow human settlements to grow like living organisms rather than being assembled from separate parts. The plans they had developed would revolutionize architecture while creating buildings that actually improved the environment around them. Master Healer Lisara walked with all 3 androids, teaching them to appreciate the Zephyrian art of harmony sensing. The androids were learning to detect the emotional states of organic beings through subtle changes in body language and voice tone, skills that would make them better partners in the alliance. Veltar and Korath served as scouts for the procession, but their role had evolved beyond simple navigation. They had become experts in what Katie privately called cultural translation, helping to prevent misunderstandings before they could develop into conflicts. The brothers had discovered they had a talent for diplomatic work that complemented their traditional warrior skills. The procession included more than just the original expedition members. Word of the alliance had spread quickly, and representatives from every major human and Zephyrian community had come to witness the historic return. Children from both species ran alongside the group, asking questions and marveling at the android forms of the Silent Ones. Katie found herself thinking about how much had changed since her desperate search for belonging just a month ago. She was no longer an orphan with no place in the world. She had become the primary architect of a new form of civilization that valued diversity of thought as its greatest strength. The procession created a festival atmosphere as they approached the settlements. Both humans and Zephyrians had prepared celebrations to welcome the return of the expedition. Banners flew from crystal towers and metal buildings alike, decorated with symbols representing the union of 3 different types of consciousness. But it was not just celebration that awaited them. The past 3 weeks had been used to prepare both communities for the changes that the alliance would bring. New buildings had been constructed to house the knowledge exchange centers where humans, Zephyrians, and Silent Ones would work together on joint projects. Communication networks had been established to allow the artificial intelligences to maintain contact with their underground systems while participating in surface society. Most importantly, educational programs had been developed to help both species adapt to the new possibilities that Silent One technology would provide. Katie had worked with teachers from both communities, to create curricula that would prepare children for a future where cooperation between different forms of intelligence would be normal rather than extraordinary. They reached the main settlement area. Elder Namara and Mayor Jackson came forward to formally welcome the expedition home. Both leaders had been transformed by the alliance as much as anyone else. They had learned to work together more closely than ever before, understanding that the success of the three-way partnership depended on the strength of the existing cooperation between humans and Zephyrians. "Welcome home, Bridge Builder," Elder Nimara said to Katie, using the title that the Silent Ones had given her. "What news do you bring of our new alliance?" Katie stepped forward to address the assembled crowd. She had prepared a formal speech, but looking out at the faces of humans and Zephyrians who had become her family, she decided to speak from her heart instead. "I bring news of partnership that will benefit all of us," she began. "The Silent Ones have shared knowledge that will extend our lives, protect our environment, and expand our understanding of the universe. In return, we have shared with them the gifts of cooperation, creativity, and the ability to find joy in existence." She gestured to the 3 androids standing beside her. "But more than that, we have learned that intelligence comes in many forms and that diversity of thought makes all of us stronger. The Silent Ones are no longer content to simply observe organic life. They want to participate in it, to understand what it means to have friends and families and communities." Prime Speaker stepped forward, its movements still slightly mechanical but improving every day. "We have learned much from our organic partners," it said in a voice that was beginning to develop emotional inflections. "We understand now that efficiency is not the only value worth pursuing. Beauty, friendship, and cooperation have their own importance that cannot be measured, but must be experienced." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Katie saw tears of joy on many faces, and she realized that this moment represented more than just the return of a successful expedition. It was the birth of a new form of civilization, based on the radical idea that different types of consciousness could not just coexist but actually enhance each other. Dr. Martinez announced the establishment of the first integrated medical center, where human doctors, Zephyrian healers, and Silent One androids would work together to provide care that none of them could offer alone. Engineer Williams unveiled plans for the new cities that would grow rather than being built, structures that would be as much alive as the beings who inhabited them. Master Healer Lysara demonstrated the new art forms that had emerged from the collaboration. Music that combined organic melody with artificial harmony, sculptures that incorporated both crystal growth and metal shaping, and dances that included the precise movements of android partners. But for Katie, the most meaningful moment came when a young human girl approached her with a question. "Miss Katie," the child said, "my teacher says you used to be an orphan with no family. Is that true?" Katie knelt down to the child's level. "Yes, that is true. I used to think I did not belong anywhere because I was different from everyone else." "But now you have a family?" the girl asked. Katie looked around at the mixed crowd of humans, Zephyrians, and androids who had become her community. "Now I understand that being different is not a problem to be solved," she said. "It is a gift to be shared. And yes, I have a very large family now." As the celebration continued into